Morning, everyone. Welcome. Welcome to Agency Emergency Planning, sponsored by the Bay Area UASI and CADRE. I'm Marcia Hovey. I'm the chair of CADRE, and just a few housekeeping things while we're getting started. If you could please use two things. One, on your picture, the picture of you, or even just your name, if you could go in and the name so that it has your first name and the organization that you're with, so that it's a little easier for us to put the names with the organization. So rename yourself so that you have your first name. I guess I should do that too. First name and organization. There we go. And then once you've done that, go to the chat, which is, if you haven't used Zoom before, and if you haven't yet, you're lucky. But go to the chat and type in the name of your organization and your name, what your title is, and a one-line description of what your organization does. So again, that's your name, organization, your title, and a one-line description of what your organization does. And then we're going to use the chat a lot because when we have a bunch of people on the line, it's hard to get a word in if you're not in control of the microphone. So please, if any questions that you have, any questions that you have, because sometimes other people on the line can answer it, sometimes we can answer it. If we don't get to all the questions, we'll reach back out to you later. So we'll make sure that everybody gets their questions answered. I wanted to say a shout out to a few people on the line. We've got, let me admit that person. We have Corinne Bartshire from Bay Area UASI, and we have Phyllis Colley from San Francisco CARD, and we have Jim Huey from NorCal VOAD. And we just wanted to thank those folks for being on and supporting us today. We're all doing training now, and so you'll hear a little bit more about that later, but Phyllis is also doing training in the North Bay, and so we're just, I think I saw Ron too. I did. Where'd he go?
I'm here.
Hi. So, and Ron is also doing training, so we're just here starting off the training season and helping each other out. If you have the ability to put your video on now, just so we can see your smiling face. It'll be okay if you turn it off because of bandwidth issues or any of that, but it is just nice to see everybody's faces. And then if we do call on you to speak at some point, if we're going to do that, then put your video back on then if you can. But we are going to be asking questions. We could actually call on you by name and ask you a question. So not too much multitasking. I'm telling myself that too. All right, and then let's see. These presentations were funded by Bay Area UASI, so we're very grateful that they're funding training for the whole Bay Area, and that's really exciting for us. And this is just day one, so looking forward to seeing you all in future trainings. All right, next slide. So the objectives for today, for agency emergency planning, it's to kind of look at the readiness of your organization as it relates to emergency preparedness. What do you have in place? What are the things you might not have thought about yet? and then we'll help you start to identify what you can do to be better prepared. And then we will do a little bit of a breakout session so that you can share information with each other. We want to hear who's doing what. You may find someone on the call that can help you because you've done less in an area that they've done more in. So it's all about that networking and doing more with less. So with each other, the better. All right, I'm going to turn it over to our facilitator and main trainer for today. You know her, you love her. It's Anna Swardensky.
Okay, good morning, everybody. And as we transition, Marcia, I'm going to give you controls over admitting anybody in the waiting room. If you'll monitor that, Rich is monitoring our email account if we have any login problems at the moment. But for all 33 of us on this line right now, let's go ahead. What I have for you, let me get my clicker in the right place. Okay, so here's what we have planned for you today. We're going to do our best in this COVID pandemic environment to make these trainings as interactive as possible. And so we're going to use a number of the tools in Zoom to keep this as fun and as engaging as we possibly can. So Marcia already explained video. We'd like you to keep your video on at all possible. We do understand, and we ourselves are subject to some bandwidth issues here and there, but if you are willing to keep your camera on, we certainly would appreciate that. We will be asking questions. I will be asking questions along the way. So there'll be opportunities where we'll want to see you nod your head, put your thumb up, clap your hands, wave at us, show different ways of showing your feedback as if we were all in a classroom together as we learn to meet and go through workshops in this new virtual environment. You saw the chat box for anybody who's joined us a few minutes late. We are asking you to put in the chat box your name, your organization's name, and a brief one-line description of what your organization does. You're a homeless service provider, you're a senior nutrition program, you're a fire district that does CERT trainings. Just help us all learn to network and build relationships with one another through the chat box. A couple of you have, we've asked if you could change your Zoom ID to represent your name and your agency's name. If you have a long name like me, it could just be your first name and the organization you represent. If you're not sure how to do that, if you click on your own little picture, there's 3 little dots in the upper right-hand corner. You click on those 3 dots and there's a rename feature. And that's where we're asking you to put in Gianna has already done this, Gianna-SVILC. Tracy, Hope's Corner, thank you for doing that. That helps us all as we continue through our sessions. We're going to ask folks to do that at each and every one of our workshops so we can see who's on the line. Okay, a couple other Zoom notes. Zoom reactions, not sure if you've ever used that. At the bottom of your screen, when you click, there's a little happy face with a plus sign and the word reactions underneath that. If you click on that box, you get a thumbs up or a clapping hands motion. Hit one of those so we know that you found that feature. And great, I'm seeing them pop up on the screen. They will disappear in a few moments, so you don't need to put your thumb down, or you can manually put your thumb down. But feel free to use those reactions as you're listening to us this morning. If there's particular items that we're covering in the presentation and you like what you're hearing, it's a thumbs up, a clap, give us your feedback along the way. Lastly, there is also a raise your hand feature. And because I'm in host mode, I'm having a little trouble seeing that, but I believe it's in your participants tab. Find your raise your hand. And if you'll raise your hand on screen, so I know you found that. Jennifer Ponce, Ron, you found it. If you would like to speak aloud or you have a question that you don't want to put in the chat box, raise your hand and we'll call on you, okay? Our co-facilitators for today are Marcia Rich Sido from our CADRE Board of Directors and myself. So we'll be monitoring all these features in Zoom, and we really want this to be as interactive as we can, okay? Are you guys ready to get started? See some head nods. Okay, head nods, thumbs up. All right, buckle up, let's get going. All right, we're going to start off today with a participant poll. So a way for you to interact with us right now. I've got, oh, hold on, your poll session is inactive. You're logged on from another device. Okay, see, these are all the tricks we get to figure out as we're doing this. All right, I'm going to launch poll number 1. It's going to show up on your screen, and if you will give us your feedback on this. So the first question is, where is your agency or program located? Who do you serve? For this morning's session, we are the trainers. CADRE is the training lead for the South Bay hub of the Bay Area UASI. So we know that, are you seeing the poll, guys?
Yes.
Okay, good. We know that you are coming in from all parts of the Bay Area, predominantly the South Bay hub, which is known as Santa Clara, Santa Cruz, Monterey, and San Benito counties. But as Marcia said, we're launching this community preparedness series today, so we know we have some other folks from outside of the region. Let's see. Marcia, are you seeing the poll pop up on your screen, the results?
I am seeing it, and let me screenshot one question.
Okay.
And 2 questions.
And guess what? Marcia, you're going to have to tell me what it says because my screen's not showing the results. So,
okay. So 12 of, oh, people are still doing it.
Okay. Let me
so we've got 12 from Santa Clara County, 5 from Monterey, 2 from Santa Cruz, 5 from San Benito, and 5 from out of the area. And then regarding the emergency plan, 6 plan to have staff know how to use it. 12 have a plan, but staff need training. 4 don't have a written plan. And 3 aren't sure.
Okay. I'm seeing a couple hands raised. Are you guys still wanting to raise your hand, or you just need to click that off? Let's see, Lars Eric, Jennifer Ponce, Liam, are you still wanting to ask something? Oh, I see hands going down. Okay, type in the chat box if you want to poll, otherwise I'm gonna keep going.
So if you hit raise hand, you hit it one more time to make it go away?
Raise hand, you hit it one.
Okay.
Yes, you have to toggle it on and off. Sorry, I didn't give you that little tidbit. Okay, I'm going to end the poll. Thank you for participating. Did you guys get to see all those results? No. Okay. Yes, here it comes. There we go. Is it coming up? Okay. So that's what you see. That's what we get. Tells us a little bit about who's here. All right. So when we sent you your login for today, we sent you a number of other files along with today's agenda. One of them is so we want to start with your own disaster planning and emergency readiness. So we wanted you to think about this self-assessment and go ahead. And if you haven't yet done this, I see a number of people pulling papers out. Perfect. Just like we're in a classroom. Pull this out, grab 3 different color markers. Hopefully you can find something close to red, close to. And if you haven't done this exercise, you have the instructions in the upper left. Make a mark, outline it, color it, put an X or something over it in one of those 3 colors if you think that your organization has taken care of personal preparedness for your staff or organization, if you've got a disaster mission statement, you've got MOUs, take a few moments to fill that out. Put your thumbs up when you're done coloring activity. And I am going to put on the screen the next slide, which gives you a little bit more definition for what each of those boxes represent. And for those of you who did the homework, woohoo, I saw thumbs go up. I'm gonna pause for just a few moments and give people a chance to catch up. Oops, I did something fun. We do that. I have a little entertainment for us. One moment. Man, I had something really cool for you guys and I can't get my computer to do it. There's my Zoom. Okay, how are we doing, folks? Did you get your things done? Get your coloring in for the morning? Show me some head nods, some thumbs up. All right. I am going back. Are you all seeing on the screen the triangle again? Okay, so let's chat about this for a little bit and what you were doing with your own exercise. We want to hear from you on, when you thought about these different planning elements for your own organization, what thoughts went through your mind as you were doing this exercise? Were there things that surprised you? Did anything make you uncomfortable? Raise your hand if you want to speak aloud or type something in the box. We want this to be interactive, so give us a few of your thoughts. Liam's saying, I'm new to my organization, so I'm not sure. Okay, that's fine. Same thing, not too familiar, makes me feel like I need to know more about our plans. Perfect, that's why you're here this morning, Gianna. Awesome.
No, and I'll just add, Anna, this is Jennifer, and just for those of you who don't know, I'm a emergency services coordinator for a local municipality, and you shouldn't feel worried or upset with those two comments that you just hammered out. You know, the very basic starts with your own personal preparedness, and I can tell all of you that mine is yellow because I'm never perfect at that at home. So I just want to, encourage all of you. You'll get there.
Awesome. Perfect, Jennifer. Thank you for that feedback. Okay, let's keep going because we're got one more thing. We're making you work hard this morning in just the first couple of minutes. So I've got one more poll for you, and then we're going to talk at you for a little while. So for the participant poll, number 2, poll number 2 coming up on your screen.
You hear this? Listen. As soon as
I hear somebody's microphone. Linda, if you want to mute. Do you have a team at your agency that's agency planning? And are you the lead? You'll click the answers to that. And Marcia, I'm going to have you speak aloud when that's coming through because I just found this nice little glitch in our system that doesn't show up for me.
Yeah, it's coming through.
Okay.
but Haneen is not seeing the poll. I can see it.
I'm not seeing any polls. Okay, sorry about that, Haneen. Marcia, give me some quick results and take a few screenshots.
You have a team at your agency tasked with emergency planning. 17 say yes, 4 say no.
Oh, look at that. Look, I got a typo in there.
No, they know that they don't. And then I don't know, 5. And then are you the lead? 9 are yes, 13 are no. 1 is we don't have a leader. And 3 is I don't know who's responsible.
Okay.
That's a
that's
pretty normal average.
Yep. And that's what that helps us as we keep going here. All right. So why did we have you do this coloring exercise, and what's behind this triangle I gave you this morning? Let's talk about a little bit of the background on the concepts that you just worked with. These are what are known as resilience concepts that were originally developed actually here locally in the Bay Area beginning over a decade ago, back in 2009, by an organization called the Fritz Institute. And they worked in partnership with community and faith-based organizations from throughout the greater Bay Area in developing some of these concepts and from their research. So this hierarchy of organizational preparedness was done out of the Fritz Institute's work in collaboration with a group called California Volunteers, which is actually an office of our governor, and it was all done under a project that was funded by U.S. Homeland Security. So some of you might recall throughout the greater Bay Area, there was a project that was funded by California Volunteers back in 2012 that was all about supporting the disaster resilience of community nonprofits and promoting these concepts and preparedness. And so CADRE's worked closely with California Volunteers over many years, as have some of our other regional partners here on the line with us. And folks within our Santa Clara County leadership might remember this, like Jennifer Ponce, who was out there training with us 6, 8, 10 years ago. So that's where the origin of this triangle came from. And then was in 2016, a small team of us here in Santa Clara County started working again with these preparedness principles and wanted to apply that more directly to our planning work with community-based and faith-based organizations. And so we adapted this triangle and inserted those planning elements on that self-assessment tool that you worked with based upon some of the best practices, our work of successful planning efforts that were being utilized really across the region by both community and faith-based providers. And so that self-assessment tool was developed as a way to kind of orient a conversation in our nonprofit sector to help you kind of understand and think about the many facets, topics, and planning aspects that would enhance an organization's disaster readiness and resilience. So today's topic for the remainder of this 90-minute session is all about agency emergency planning. And what we have done is use those topics and those in the triangle and actually created an emergency planning guide. And so the planning guide was funded in Santa Clara County with Emergency Management Performance Grant money. And for today's session, we actually sent that to you today. So we hope that you have this available to you either on your screen or printed out, because we are going to be referencing and digging through that workbook planning tool throughout today's session, as well as future training sessions that are part of this series this fall. So today's session's aimed at helping you to understand this planning tool. So let's start diving into the content, okay? We'll be using excerpts from the workbook And there are a number of other planning tools that kind of go along with that or supplement that, that are all in our CADRE website that we can give you access to after today's session. So we want to thank Bay Area UASI, Corinne and her colleagues for this funding this series of webinars from now through October or November. So hang on to your guide. Marketers, we're going to put up a calendar of the series topics and dates towards the end of today's session, and we'll be referencing throughout the program. If we don't dig into a particular topic in the chart, we're going to tell you because that's coming up in August, in September, in October. Okay, so let's keep going. Why do we want our organizations to plan for emergencies? Starting with the basics. I guess we can all agree that the first statement here on the screen is true, right? Who knew 4 or 5 months ago that we would be facing a worldwide pandemic and have to pivot not only in our work responsibilities, but really with just about every aspect of our lives. Our work responsibilities may have changed, our work environments have changed and locations, our work priorities may have shifted. I think a number of us are facing implications and stressors as part of the nonprofit sector. Personally, we've all felt the impact. That's why we're here on these screens today, right? We're having to multitask, take care of family members, children, elders, even our pets, all while we're trying to work like we normally do in our office environments, right? Our ability to get food has been impacted. Our transportation systems are not the same. Healthcare, even the simple ability to get a haircut, right? How many of you guys can relate to that? I'm seeing Lars Eric playing with his hair. Yes, we're all struggling with that. So there is a concept I want to put out at the start of our dialogue today, which is there is a difference between planning and resilience. And emergency plans help you to define and articulate for your organization how you're going to communicate with your staff, with your clients, with others like government entities. It helps you to think ahead of time and document what are the services that your organization or agency feels are essential, and whether or not you can do more than your normal to support the greater community. Those are all things that are going to appear in an emergency plan document. Disaster resilience, when we talk about those terms, is really about your ability to rebound from the damage and disruption that might result from an emergency or a disaster. It's a combination of personal, organizational, and your facilities capacity to continue to provide your services and resume your operations. Okay, so there's a difference in that, and the reason we want to call that out is how you use the guide. In the guide, there are topics that we're going to ask you to think about and questions to answer for your own organization that not necessarily appear as a written paragraph in your disaster plan or emergency plan, but it would relate to your disaster resilience, okay? So the planning workbook we're going to take you through. If you don't have a plan already and you're just getting started, as Jennifer said, absolutely fine. We know some people are just getting underway with this. So we are going to walk you through different workbook components throughout this fall session. And if you email us, we will send you a companion tool that's kind of an annotated outline that shows you where you take a concept or a set of concepts from the workbook and translate that into a plan document. It's kind of a crosswalk between the workbook and actually having a plan document. If you already have a plan in place for your organization, our hope is that in going through series with us, you're going to be able to identify gaps or sections of your plan that will help you strengthen your organization and work through any other ways to strengthen staff preparedness and your resilience, okay? And then you'll be able to insert any of that planning into your own existing document. So starting at the beginning, we're going to start at the bottom of the pyramid on the far left, you see that topic of personal preparedness. I'm going to ask Rich Saito to go ahead and say a few words about this box and what he's got planned for folks who have registered to join us back again at 1 p.m. today. Rich?
All right, well, good morning, everybody. Welcome. We're going to be covering Tier 1, the personal preparedness, your team, the emergency alerts and communication, procedures, resiliency, facilities, and hazard assessment this afternoon between 1 and 2. So we hope that you'll join us there. The reason this is at the bottom of the pyramid is because it forms the foundation. And I know Anna's going to talk a little bit more about it later, but if you aren't personally prepared to deal with an emergency and respond, you're not going to be able to contribute to your organization or even the community, which is Tier 2 and Tier 3. So we ask that you consider this, start with the very basic foundational personal emergency preparedness, and then the other things you can build on top of later. So thank you, Anna.
All right, thanks, Rich. So next up, I have Marcia Hovey, who's going to talk a little bit about some of the other boxes on this bottom tier. Marcia?
We're just really giving you an overview because you have all of the questions that you need to answer in the workbook, but just to have you think about the fact that their emergency alert notification, it's not just receiving information. So if you're trying to, you want to know what's going on in your community, you want to make sure that you've got not only yourself, but all of your staff signed up for those emergency alerts and notifications for your community. I'm putting in the chat San Benito, Santa Cruz, which is the same, it's called Code Red, and Monterey's is Alert Monterey, and Santa Clara County's is Alert SCC. But you want to make sure that all of your staff are getting notifications so that they are the first to know that something is happening, that they need to take some action. But then you also want to think about how you push out notifications. If you have to, if you need to warn staff, obviously we have, fire alarms if we need to warn staff about getting out of a building. But what if there was a shooter? How would you warn staff if there was someone in the building that was dangerous? And if all else fails, what if communication fails? Let's say it's the earthquake and your phone system fails. What's your backup plan? Do you have a default? Do you tell staff, if you can't reach us, do this? If you can't reach us, stay home and wait until you hear or see on our website that we're asking for you to come in. Or if the ground shakes and it's bad in our area, we want you to come to work and we will meet you there. So you just want to keep having a default, and many backup systems have a procedure for reporting emergencies as well. What if 911 isn't working, and once in a while it doesn't? Then there are backup phone numbers to get into the 911 center. If it's that earthquake, what if you have no communication at all, and you need to reach out to your city or your county? Ham radio is the one and only method of communication that's never failed in a disaster. And let's see, looking at all my notes here to see what else I want to say.
I'm going to jump in. If you're looking on your workbook, we are looking at pages 13 and 14 of your workbook, okay?
I did mean to say that too. Yeah, page 13 and 14 is all about emergency notifications. And the thing is if you sit down for 5 minutes with a team of people, you are going to come up with some basic answers, and then you just write those basic answers into statements, and that becomes part of your plan. If you don't have buy-in from your executive team, that's a challenge. And so do your best to get them on board so that they will take this seriously, and then you'll get something done. If you don't have that buy-in, then you want to work with staff or and anyone that's in the organization that believes in preparedness, and you can create momentum from the bottom up too, and create that desire to do more emergency planning. All right, next. Your emergency coordination team. And again, this is now on page 15 and no, it's not. Sorry, I think it's before it.
Page 10 and 11.
Yeah, but it's before it. We did them out of order. So on page 10 and 11, it talks about your emergency coordination team. Now you may have one team or you may have two. So, you know, in a perfect world, you have kind of a policy-making team that gets together and decides what's the best for the organization, and then they write this plan and then select a team of people that become the responders to actually implement it, and then train them on it, get their feedback, rewrite it. But in most organizations, I don't see that happening. So you might plan it and actually implement it. You really have to test your plan, because you won't know what you don't know until you walk through the steps. We just like the rest of the local jurisdictions and state and federal jurisdictions, organize based on the incident command system. And that's just a people management tool. It's a way to create order from chaos. We are going to have it at full training on that later in the fall, September, I think. And so you just want to make sure you have that team in place, that everybody knows who they are, so that if people have concerns, because those that are working in the offices or working in the field will recognize gaps in your planning that you may not see, just because they're out there living it and doing it. And so you want to have a good line of communication between whoever's writing the plans and the people that are going to be implementing the plans. And next. So in the chat box, could just type in, are you working at, or maybe just a hand raise. Let's be easy. Or 50-50, okay. Yeah, I like to see the chat run up there. So in the chat box, are you working from home all the time, half the time? You have to be at the office all the time. And the reason that we're asking is that we used to just have to plan for the office. Obviously you have your own personal preparedness, but now you have to be able to plan to perform your critical function from home. And that might be a little bit different than what you've been thinking about in the past. Yep. How many of you like working from home? Raise your hand. I do. How many are never going back? No, sorry. That's a different topic. All right. And then also type in the chat, think about the hazards that you face in your home office. If there was an earthquake, like I'm looking behind, I have a lot of books, and that's a yellow in my pyramid because I still have to secure it. The bookcases are secure, but the books will come down. But so there are things, and you really just want to look around your space and say, if the ground shakes, where are the hazards here? And then it's pretty easy to mitigate that. Now, if it's a public safety power shutoff, if the power goes out, can you still do your job? Now, maybe you're lucky and you have a generator. Maybe you have purchased a battery backup system. Some have solar panels with a battery backup system. So those are just things that you want to think about. And again, preparing is a process, so you may not be able to do everything all at once. I'm jealous Linda has a generator. But you do, if you want to be able to communicate, you've got to have some kind of a backup power to recharge your cell phone, to keep your computer up and running, so that you can at least have, you know, bare minimum contact with the other people. Let's see, Lars Eric, I had a battery backup, but the area Wi-Fi, yes. And that was a big thing too, because the area Wi-Fi in a few of the public safety power shutoffs has shut down because they, wherever it was coming from did not have a battery backup. Now, there are processes being worked on now to get service providers to be more prepared. That's something to think about, because you could also purchase the, you know, the wireless, it's called a MiFi, I think, for AT&T, but there is a way to have your own direct connect to the satellite so that you have power too. And I see Terry's raising her hand. You want to unmute Terry? Let's see. All I can click is ask to unmute. So maybe Terry, you can unmute yourself.
I didn't know if you were talking to me. I didn't see me raising my hand, so I apologize.
Oh, okay. Just
I was clicking on something else, so let me make sure if I'm undone, and then I will.
Okay. Yeah. Just don't want anybody to keep their hand up too long. You know, it gets tiring. Let's see. Unfortunately, I don't know if all businesses can afford to do portable Wi-Fi. Yeah. Yes. And so if you have to, you can do what you can do, and then you have another plan. So if you can't do that, if you can't purchase the remote Wi-Fi's, which is, I don't know, it's like $10 a month or $12 a month. If you get to a central location, if you have some kind of a plan where you go to a central location, one of those Wi-Fi's can do 5 to 10 devices. So, but again, it's just brainstorming it and asking folks like Anna, me, Jennifer Ponce, and those that are a little farther along in preparedness, that we've probably heard of some best practices that can help you.
Yeah, so I'm going to jump in. You know, how many of you might be using, I know on iPhones, some of us have the ability another device to our iPhone, so that if you lose your connection from your router at home, you might be able to still jump on the internet using your cell phone service. So yeah, tethered from your cell using your iPhone. Yep, everybody else is looking at that. I only know how to do it from an Apple, but I'm hoping other Droid devices might have that ability as well. Rich is shaking his head because he uses an Android device. Perfect. So backups to your backups.
Yep.
Always good.
And so then, you know, this is actually kind of getting into my next slide, so you can go ahead and see, you know, how do you reduce, don't have an emergency procedures still, or is that it? Is that the emergency procedure slide?
I think you cut that. Nope, I don't see that one. Sorry, Marcia.
Okay, so, and then the last part, emergency procedures is, you know, what do you do if you need to evacuate, if your communication fails, if there's an active shooter, and you obviously can't do them all at once. But if you just walk through a scenario, you know, sitting around a table or on the phone, you can just say, if we need to evacuate this building, let's start with, how do we know we need to evacuate? And this is all in the workbook on the evacuations on page 16. And then who's responsible for making sure everybody got out? And then is there any equipment that needs to be turned off? And does anybody need assistance getting out of the building? Are there stairs? So it just walks you through the process. And I guarantee you there are people at your organization that can ask all those questions and will not let you get away with having a plan that says, well, we just evacuate the building. Well, how do you evacuate the building? So writing those procedures little by little. And then the resilient facilities and the hazard assessment kind of go hand in hand. And for hazard assessment, again, I just ask a lot of what if questions. I look around and say, you know, what's here at my home that could be a risk if there was an earthquake, if there was a power shut off. At the office, it might be earthquake, power shut off, flood, active shooter. So you just start to ask the what if, and then ask yourself, what can I do to reduce that threat? And then you've got your resilient. It can be resilient because it's been seismically upgraded, because it has a composition roof, so it's not as flammable for fires. But then you also have the non-structural hazard mitigation, like making sure that your bookshelves are strapped to the wall, making sure that heavy objects aren't above your head so that they're not going to fall on you.
Marcia has some, as we talk about challenges from working from home, barking dogs, crying babies, security system alert. There you go, Steve. So see all the challenges. There we go, Marcia.
He was sleeping at my feet, and then all of a sudden, so what do you do when your dog starts barking and you need to stop? Well, you hit the mute button. So you just keep your cursor right over mute so you can stop that immediately. But just going through those procedures, and then now with pandemic, how many had a pandemic plan in place before this started? Anybody raise their hand?
Lars Eric raised his hand. He had a pandemic plan. Let's hear that, Lars Eric. What did you have? Unmute yourself.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Well, it's mostly our daily operations. My wife is a biologist. So the way we function in our house, the way we wash our dishes and wash our sink is the way she runs her lab bench. So it's just part of her daily operations because she's a scientist. So, you know, I mean, washing our hands the minute we came in the house, we were doing that anyway. You know, plus I used to teach children. So I spent, you know, years teaching children how to properly cough. You know, and if they need like sneeze in their hand, they had to go wash their hand right away. So, I mean, just when I say pandemic plan, it was just like partially the daily operations. Plus I noticed in the chat, somebody talked about having enough food, you know, and just making sure you have enough stuff in your pantry and you can't go to the store. You know, that was already in place as well. So I think that's part of the all hazards general approach. I mean, you're going to want to have plenty of food for a lot of different reasons, and that happened to be useful for pandemic.
Thank you, Lars Eric.
And I think it is, you know, it's important, obviously, if you didn't have the plan, to be jotting down what you're doing, because we may not have another pandemic once this is over for another 100 years. And so the people that experience this, I mean, 100 years ago, this happened, and I don't know that we found any, you know, much documentation on how we should prepare. There is some, but you want to leave something behind, leave your legacy so that the next person doesn't have to start from scratch. And it's interesting because in 2008, when we were planning for whatever it was, H1N1, the big focus was what do you do when you lose staff? Because the big scare was you're going to have 50 to 80% of your staff are going to be sick at the same time. And then you have to identify what it is you're supposed to do with this skeleton crew. This time we haven't even really talked about that because the focus immediately became food and housing. But that's still out there. And as the numbers are spiking now, the fact that you may have to cut back because people are not available to work is part of your planning too. So even if it doesn't become a formal plan, put what you did and, you know, what the best practices were somewhere at your office that people can find it after you're not there anymore. And I highly recommend not storing it in personal files, but having some kind of a shared drive for emergency preparedness information so that when one person leaves, their information doesn't disappear. And I think that's all I have to say right now.
Okay. And so there have been some really great comments in the chat box. Gianna's saying her office is connected actually with a local food pantry. So should they ever have to shelter in place in the office, they at least have food on site, food and drink. So we're coming your way, Gianna. Let's see, Jen from County Fire has a red bin, a plastic bin of food and water along with other supplies under each of our desks. Wow, really awesome. I saw somebody else had said they have a spreadsheet that they keep. Steve with Los Altos Hills keeps a spreadsheet to track expiration dates. Really great ideas. Thank you all for continuing to share. Keep it going. I hope you're enjoying this format and it feels a little interactive, and even if it's a little bit quiet, we do welcome you raising your hand and wanting to speak aloud, okay? We want this to be as useful as we can to all of you. So let's keep going. Any questions about Tier 1 and the different boxes that Marcia just walked us through before we keep moving on? Any questions? I only see about 16 on my screen, so Rich or Marcia, can you keep scrolling, see if there's any hands up if they aren't typing in? Okay, I'm going to keep going, but we'll come back if somebody has a question. So on to Tier 2. Tier 2 of the this hierarchy is labeled Reestablishing Operations and Service Delivery. And the very first box at the top is Disaster Mission Statement. So helps you to define the role your organization plans to play in a disaster, and it becomes the foundation for all of your work as an organization that follows. So one of the things we wanted to ask you all was another poll. How many of you have a disaster mission statement? And tell us that. And if you do have one and you happen to have it handy with you, please type that into the chat box so others in today's session can see what your disaster mission statement looks like. A disaster mission statement is different than your organization's day-to-day mission. It's a disaster mission statement requires, oftentimes will require a group discussion involving your organization or agency's leadership. Sometimes it's happened at the staff level, maybe through a management team meeting, but it ultimately needs to funnel up to your board of directors to make sure that everybody's really on the same page. So your disaster mission statement should be clear, concise, a meaningful statement of what your agency's role will be for your clients in your community in times of an emergency. So some questions to think about. As you look to craft a disaster mission statement if you don't already have one. And I'm going to pick on Lars Eric in a moment. Marcia, did you grab the poll? Can I pull that off my screen?
Yes, yes, I did. So
okay.
6 said yes, 12 said no, 8 said I don't know.
Okay, so not a lot of you have the poll, have a disaster mission statement. So Lars Eric, if I can call on you, the disaster mission statement. Ideally, you'd have that nearby, but I'm going to throw you under the bus there. If you can find that. Oh, look, he's showing it on his screen. Can you type something into the chat box so people can see?
I'll type that. I'll type it in just a moment. I found it a bit longish, so it's probably not as concise as it should be.
Okay.
Basically, it is committed to quickly providing critical services, which incorporates staff and volunteers, as well as trained staff throughout the Bay Area in order to be able to continue to serve our community with all of the agency's current services. Also committed to providing all this product and services as soon as logistically possible. And actually, this reworked a bit. I think it's a bit wordy, so I'll definitely type this up and get it in the chat box as soon as I can. So I'd actually like some feedback on how to make that more concise. This was done back in 2010, I think.
Okay, so on that note, Lars Eric, and for anybody else, if you find one for your organization, the 6 of you who said you had one, consider these questions. What services must continue following a community emergency? What services might you suspend that you normally provide? How will you support your clients? Will you support all or just some of your clients? Meaning you have to prioritize your agency's resources and services. Will cause an increase in demand for your services. Think about our food banks and food pantries and what happened with COVID-19, right? Will you support a greater good such as your neighborhood or your community, your city or county that might be different than your normal day-to-day services, okay? Your disaster mission statement should still fall in line and be consistent with your mission statement. It just tailors it down for an emergency or disaster application. So Gianna's sharing with the group, SVILC, for those of you who don't know, Silicon Valley Independent Living Center would suspend their group in-person classes, but they're going to keep their emergency services, their device loan library, which is adaptive or technology device to people with disabilities. They're going to keep their emergency financial assistance program going and their advocacy services. So really important. They've defined which things can pause, hit a pause button, and which things need to keep going. And with COVID-19, they had to shift everything over to the phone or online model. So thank you for sharing that, Gianna. So Meg's saying some classes have social distancing, some are through Zoom, depending on the client and kind of the client interaction. So great, that's exactly what we want you to think about. So disaster mission statement is the very first page of Tier 2 in your workbook. It appears on page 22. San Benito Health, you guys on my screen, you've got a wonderful small group going there this morning. This is a wonderful activity. You don't have to break up right after today's session for you guys to tackle that, crafting or putting bullet points together while your team is face-to-face on what your mission statement is. Give me a wave or a nod if you already have a disaster mission statement or you're willing to tackle that when you hang up with us today. Awesome, thank you guys. Elizabeth, did you have something you wanted to say? I saw you waving your hand. Okay, maybe that was a hand wave. I'm gonna off today. This is really the foundation of your work as an emergency in building your own organization's emergency plan. So if we can drive home one singular point today, it's for agency planning, it's figure out what your disaster mission is, communicate that as clearly and as broadly across your organization as you can. And then point number 2, drive home that personal preparedness, because you're not going to have anybody doing if your own staff and volunteers aren't prepared. And that's why we're having you come back at 1 o'clock today. Okay, so you know what we had planned for you today is rather than walk through each of the remaining boxes that you see for Tier 2, we wanted you to actually have a chance to think about, talk about in a small group with one another, you know, what are you dealing with? What are your questions? What are your successes? What are your challenges? Your self-assessment, and we're going to move you into small groups at this time, and Rich, Marcia, and myself are each going to take a small group. And while I do the technology part here and give me 30, 90 seconds to move you into small groups, I want you to think about your reds and your greens. If your reds are the things that keep you up, ideally, when you're in your small group, you're going to have a chance to talk about that and hopefully find somebody who has a yellow or a green for your red, Okay, so with that, I'm going to try and move us to small groups. Marcia, is there anything else we need to do while I'm doing that?
No, I think we're ready to go.
Okay, hang on one second. I'm going to open all the rooms and you're supposed to automatically go there, okay? And I might just have to move Marcia, Rich, and myself to make sure we're each in a room.
I'm loving all the chat. Keep that up. Is this my group? No, wait, Rich is in here. Hi, group.
Hello.
This looks like everybody's still. You have logged in from another device. You're pulling some, okay.
While they're figuring it out, I just wanted to give a shout out to San Benito County. I live in San Juan Bautista. Hi, guys. Thanks for everything you're doing. You rock.
Yeah, that's awesome.
All right, guys, I got it. I forgot to click the button that says move you all automatically. Here we go, okay?
San Benito County with San Benito Health Foundation, but yay!
San Benito County is also here.
Eric is there too.
That's great, guys. Thank you.
And Dr. Costa should be somewhere in there too.
Let's get our county off the watch list, huh?
Can't see all the participants. It says 34, but
Yeah, I'm here.
I can only see a short list.
Sure. Yes. Do you have her information?
I don't have theirs, but we can probably.
You can tell. I'm over.
I send you a text.
Pretty big group, I think, right? It's not the entire group.
Yeah, we didn't split yet.
Oh, okay, okay.
Yeah, we're doesn't matter how many times you practice. That's what we've learned.
That's split in a different group.
It doesn't ever go the way you want it. So that adapt, improvise, overcome is huge. If that isn't part of your mission statement, it probably should be.
I'm a former IT guy. Murphy was a good friend of ours.
Yeah, yep.
Okay, folks, my button that says you're supposed to all automatically go doesn't seem to want to send you to rooms. So, we can either take a few moments, just a quick bio break, and I will manually move you into rooms, or we can continue speaking as a group of the whole. Give us some feedback in the chat. You want to still go to small? I'm hearing some group as a whole, bio break. All right, thank you guys for bearing with me on my technology challenges. Bio break. Go ahead and turn your screen off, put yourself on mute and do that. And then we are going to continue as a group of the whole. Thank you all. So if you just need to excuse yourself, just do it like you normally get up and walk away in a meeting, and we're going to continue on. So here's what we had planned to do in the small groups. We were going to have you share a bit about your reds and greens. So let's start with tier 1. Type in the box if you have something that keeps you up at night that you want to talk about, or see if anybody on today's call has a solution for you. So type, if you have a red something, start your chat comment with red and then what it is. Or if you have a green, something you feel like you're doing really well that you think might be somebody else in the room here, type in green, and I've got something around my personal preparedness or my alert and notification that's working really well for my organization that you can share. We're going to take it reds and greens on the first tier, then reds and greens on the middle tier, and then on up to the top. Okay, anybody have something to share? Let's see, County Fire, Tier 1. County Fire does well with coordination of emergency teams. We love acronyms, EAPs and ICS forms. EAPs, Emergency Action Plans, and ICS, Incident Command System forms. Those are, Jen is with our County Fire. That's part of the Incident Command System. We're going to explain a whole class on Incident Command at the end of August. So if that's new to you, plan for that next month. Thank you, Jen. San Benito Health, does anybody have an ability to type in your small group? What things are priorities for you? Where are you with your planning?
We did type into the box. Are you not able to see our messages?
Let's see. Priya, there you go. Not able to buy supplies when we need them. Oh, okay. That's
So
San Benito Health Foundation.
Although we have the financial resources, items are not available.
Okay. Do we have San Benito OES on the line with us? If you are, type in there if you have a possible with your logistics section to maybe help our health foundation here.
Hi, this is Erica from San Benito County Public Health Services. So I think Chris Mangano from OES is in the call, but maybe the Health Foundation can try to get in touch with Chris Mangano at OES.
Guys, let's connect Erica with the San Benito Health Foundation folks. Maybe that's one success for the morning. Let's see. Red, MOUs on how to fulfill obligations. Okay. And you know, I realized when I asked you guys to start typing in your reds and greens, I went from tier 2 and I didn't explain tier 3 to you, but we'll loop back around that. Let's keep going on this conversation. Not being able to buy supplies.
And while you're
challenges?
Yeah, while you're continuing to type in anything that you'd like ideas on how to do it better or just different ideas. I think the supplies it's going to be a challenge. It is a challenge for all nonprofits. And we need to start having those conversations with the counties and the cities, because if they're finding supplies, if you can tie into those, and you know, you're still going to have to pay for them, but at least you're getting that bulk purchase price. But make your jurisdiction aware that you're out there, because they're just, if they're only buying for hospitals, or they're only buying for getting that there are other organizations in the community that are providing services that won't be able to provide services if they can't protect their clients. We have to be, we've got to educate and try to collaborate on purchases because they are scarce.
Okay, let's see. Got some good chat comments here. Ron, do you have a couple things to share with the group?
Yeah, it's like, I think one of the biggest scares right now is PSPS. And I know that PG&E has been trying to do a lot of outreach to some of our folks, but um, there's a lot of people out there that have power wheelchairs and other devices that they need to stay alive. And so like CPAP machines. So my concern is that, a lot of people can't afford solar panels and battery backups. And we've looked into it and they're expensive. And so I'm just wondering what's the best approach, or if there's a way that we can coordinate that, especially with the what is it? I forget, like the power centers that they put up every now and then. The first PSPS, they were putting it in some areas that our guys couldn't get there. So that was a concern.
Yeah, so the independent living centers are tied into the PG&E, and they've been given some backup power supplies that they can loan out. They also are, I think it's really important for all nonprofits to just push that information out to their clients, to make sure that everyone is aware, because it's just hard to get the message out to where it really needs to be. And then have them all register for the medical baseline, PG&E's website. There's a simple link to fill out a simple form to put their name on the list that they have medical devices that need power, so that PG&E is aware. The jurisdiction becomes aware, and then we can do a better job at getting those supplies and or moving them out of the power outage area into a hotel, which is another good option.
Yeah.
We have Silicon Valley Independent Living on the line.
Perfect. And Gianna, I know it's like we've been trying to get those batteries out. It's like when I was at Krill, that was one of the hardest things. It's when I was down in Southern California when the first PSPS happened, and Lars Eric gave me a call and said, "Hey, Ron, I heard you got batteries." And I'm kind of like, that news didn't hit me yet. No, we don't have batteries. But then I worry about, because there's so many people out there with wheelchairs and there's so many batteries. It's like, what are some of the outside ideas that we can come up with where people can still stay active, still stay mobile, still get that information. At one point we were thinking we'll just get the batteries out to people and they will be fine. But then if a power shutoff doesn't happen in their area, but it happens in another area, how do you shift that? So there's a lot of coordination involved.
It's funny that you say that, because I think, and my colleague Lisa, who actually oversees our PSPS calls and just coordination, it was October and we were in a summit in Southern California, and I think you were there, and this is the same time, and we were having a major issue with someone who was, I think, residing in the next county over from us, and our executive, Sherry, was like freaking out and was on the phone until almost like midnight that same night, and we had just flown into this conference. And between, I think, 3 different EDs and CFILC, who everyone was there in that same conference, managed to make it happen and get a battery, which we had just received and barely charged before we left, to that person and back. And yeah, it takes like a village to get that going. And to make sure that we have the right system in place. So this Lisa actually oversees our phone calls. She goes and calls every single person. We have a survey on whoever we have as a consumer to ask, like, what kind of medical equipment do you have that would rely on electricity? And do you have a means of backup? Have you signed up for those programs? And anytime we have a new intake or any kind of updated service, we try and get that survey to her so she has it on file for a quick call.
And that's only the disabled population or community? It's like, what about seniors that also need this equipment?
So we try and include that, but I think what we're trying to base on is the equipment itself, just because we are doing,
you know, the work for the disabled community, but that includes aging.
Right.
But it depends also on the senior and like what kind of equipment do they have. If they are, let's say, a senior that has diabetes and their medication must be kept in the fridge, then they're going to indicate that they do require electricity for that refrigerator. Otherwise, they pose the risk of their medication going bad. If it's just somebody saying, oh, my food is going to go bad and I don't have any medication in there that is sustaining my life, then they may not be prioritized on that list for a backup battery. So,
okay, I'm going to jump in here. Really great info on a particular program for power shutoffs and folks who have life dependency issues. And yes, our independent living centers are doing some amazing work across the state. I saw some other comments coming through about the challenge of training staff and keeping folks prepared. So, you know, keep thinking about that. If our goal in providing these trainings, folks, is to try and support your planning efforts, give you an ability to share things that are, you know, kind of best practices or things that are working well for your own organization, but also give you a forum where you can connect with other colleagues in the sector and folks like ourselves and Ron and others across the region who, if you're having a challenge, maybe we can brainstorm you in touch and make some connections. So I want to jump back for a moment because I made a boo-boo on my part of not covering tier 3 for you all. So I want to go back to tier 3 and tell you, you know, what is included in tier 3 in that last segment of your workbook before we run out of time. So how many of you, just if you're on video, raise your hand. I don't need you to do anything with your electronic. Raise your hand. How many of you are responding to COVID-19 kind of issues right now? Okay. And how many of you were deemed an essential service provider, meaning you never shut down back in March? You just had to pivot really quickly. Okay. Great. I'm seeing some people raising their hands on screen. Do you have something that you want to share, or you can type in the box? Keep typing in the box, but we were just trying to make this be a little interactive in a different way. I think I had a hand up somewhere, or did it go down? You were just raising your electronic hand if you were off screen. Okay, so whether we liked it or not, many of us did have to pivot really quickly with little or no advanced planning and to meet emerging community needs. And so tier 3 really focuses on the title of fulfilling a broader community role. How do you coordinate with others? What kind of agreements? MOUs are memorandums of understanding or written agreements with other entities outside of your organization. What kind of training have you been able to provide, or do you need to provide? So I want to bring you some dates for your calendar, and we will send out an email after today's workshop to all of you with enough flyer for the whole series, so you'll get all these dates. But when we look at this set of planning elements, you see coordination with others. Our next series, or our next webinar in this series, will be focusing on community-based nonprofit coordination with government. So on August 13th, that session is CBO and government coordination for Santa Clara County. We're going to talk about what we did, and maybe the other big event for us in Santa Clara County was the 2017 floods in San Jose. We're going to talk about how did we coordinate together our nonprofit and government community and mobilize. If you are joining us from San Benito, Monterey, or Santa Cruz, your session on coordination will be Friday, August 21st. Same topic, a chance for you to talk with your emergency managers and local government reps as community-based organizations, looking at how to better coordinate response and efforts. In the middle of this graphic, you see the box called donations. That's going to be a topic we're going to delve in on October 8th. The issue of donations management. Some of you brought that up today, how to get supplies Sometimes that intersects with donations if we're fortunate. Sometimes it means we have to figure out how we purchase things or get access to things like San Benito Health was saying when it's not available on the open market, right? So donations is going to be a topic in October. We're going to hear from hopefully some experts that work in this arena day to day, teach us about, you know, what is sometimes referred to as that disaster within the disaster. For the COVID-19, donations had a lot to do with getting access to PPE. But in other disasters, it's often things that we think about when people want to clean out their garages and donate household goods that we're not sure, you know, how do we manage that? That first box, MOUs and agreements, you know, COVID highlighted the importance for all of us in the nonprofit sector about how we need to coordinate better with different entities. Raise your hand if it's in your camera, raise your hand on the video if you have any kind of written agreement with a government entity. How many of you have some type of MOU or government? Okay, I'm seeing a few of you. We're going to talk about that a little bit more in our government coordination workshop. We were able, CADRE was able to actually put its hands on some template MOU COVID-19 that might be important to share with you. We have access to some things that are around food distribution, agreements between nonprofits and government that are trying to look at reimbursement through FEMA, et cetera. Marcia, do you want to take a moment to talk about training and exercise? The biggest exercise I think we all had was this COVID-19 experience, right? But Marcia, why don't you tell the group a little bit about some of the trainings we've offered just in the last couple of months on emergencies and COVID.
That would mean I have to remember the titles of them. Huh?
All right, I'll help you out a bit. We
had one with public health because we wanted clarification on things that are in our protocols and just asking questions in general. And so we were able to get the deputy health officer in, and then I'm bringing him up right now so I can tell you. We did one on disaster documentation because all of these expenses, additional expenses, may be reimbursable, or even the bigger one is actually creating the contracts, because if government is asking you to do the services, you should have a written contract and then they can get reimbursed. We also had one on staff care, supporting your workforce, nonprofits sharing spaces to save money.
And all of those sessions are on our CADRE website as Zoom webinars that you can go back and view. Okay, we load all of our webinars up to our CADRE website and their YouTube files. So today's session we'll do the same thing with, but we're trying to make trainings as available as we can in these environments. And so things like disaster documentation, that kind of touches a little bit on vital records concepts of what do you need to keep track of. Sharing space, that's a session that's going on this week and next in Santa Clara County. That is touching on some of that recovery planning. How do we move forward? Lars Eric saying FEMA's doing a webinar in our region. Yes, they are. I have it right next to me here on training opportunities, preparing before a disaster. There's a whole set of trainings that FEMA's making available, and we can send those out too if so folks can get access. One of them's today, and the next repeat is on August 6th for FEMA Region 9. So, you know, there's lots of opportunities to stay connected. I'm keeping track of time here. It's 10:54. I'm committed to getting you guys out on time at 11. So If you came today with a particular question on preparing your organization and you haven't yet heard an answer or been connected to someone who might be able to help you with that, please type it in the chat box or send it directly to Marcia, Rich, or I so we can follow back up with you after today. What's coming up next? We're going to do a small group report out. CADRE support. Planning and technical assistance is sometimes available through our grant sources, and I'm really happy to say and thank you to Corinne that starting in September, we're going to delve into some of those tier 2 concepts and under a workshop that's going to be titled Continuity of Operations Planning. And part of the support that we can offer to all of you through this training series is some technical assistance. We haven't yet figured out if we're going to do that in small groups, kind of one-on-one, match you up, you know, greens and reds, etc. But there is an ability to provide some technical support to you as community-based nonprofits and faith-based organizations. So let us know when we send you your eval link if advantage of. That'll give us a jump start in planning for who wants some additional planning and technical assistance. What you're seeing there is this picture. That's one of our planning toolkits that we developed in a prior grant year, and we might throw those out, you know, tools and pieces electronically to folks depending on what their needs are, okay? Let's see. I was going to turn it back to you to kind of walk folks through this South Bay, what's coming up next. Marcia, you're muted.
If you're registered for this training, then you know how to get to all these others. And right now on my screen, it's very small because I was looking at all the people. So our next one is at 1 o'clock today. That's personal preparedness for staff and volunteers. And then Anna just talked about the CBO and government liaison. So look down the list, the incident command system, continuity of operations, and then the volunteer management. That's one of my favorite ones. And donations management, and then a repeat of what we're doing right now, which will be in the fall. We will, they'll all be recorded. So I was going to say register, and then if you can't make it, you know that you can come in. I think we really are interested in the level of interest. And then we will keep track of how many views that we have on the videos too, if we can do that, just to see. But I think that this is, you know, one of the silver linings of the pandemic is that we never recorded these presentations. And so if you couldn't make it to our meeting, you missed out. And so I just love the fact that now you can watch this at midnight if you want to. And again, like Anna said, anything that we can do to help you, we want to be able to do that. So we're still having a little bit of challenges with the registration, but you should already have your registration with the batep.org website. If you haven't done that, go in and log in and create that link. And then once you do that, you'll be able to log in to register for the other classes. And then
before we log, we get too far at the end, Corinne from UASI, do you have any other remarks you'd like to share with the group this morning?
Thank you for the opportunity to listen in. Sorry, my camera's been off. I've been having unreliable Wi-Fi today. Yeah. So thanks all. This has been a great session.
Okay, thank you, Corinne, for joining us. And so what you see here on your closing remarks screen, we're trying something new. If you have your phone with you nearby, if you hold up your video or you turn on your camera and scan this QR code, it should take you right now to our participant feedback. So if you'd like to give that technology thing a try. That'll take you right to our Survey Monkey. We will send that out to you by email along with the series flyer. So you'll have all those dates. Oh, look at that. Marcia just held it up. It worked. Yay. It sure worked better than my small room breakouts for you this morning. Okay, and I think that's all we have for you today. We really appreciate you joining in. It's 10:59. Please give us your feedback, the good, the bad, the things you want to see us improve, what you liked, and we'll keep getting better at this as we move forward. And I'm not going to do my little thank you slide because I'm going to leave that QR code up for you. So give us a shout out, a wave as you go off the screen. And hopefully, if not all of you, back at 1 o'clock for personal preparedness.
Well done, Anna.
Thank you, Jim.
See you at 1.
All right. I think we can pause the recording.